Hey, welcome everybody. I thought I'd do a quick little demonstration here of how I write blog posts and sort of show off my tool chain, sort of how I approach the problem of creating content, and maybe along the way show you some of the tools I use. So let's get started. So to begin with, I use VS Code as my editor. That's all fine and good and dandy. But the way I usually start off this is a fairly recent change for me actually, but when I start writing a blog post, I start off by going to my Clubhouse board. So if you've never seen Clubhouse before, it's very much like Jira or Trello. It's basically like a task tracker. And you can see I have various different cards that represent things I want to do. This is basically a sprint board. And you can see, whoops, we have a to-do column, things I've done, and then in between we have blocked and doing, and then the last column is not doing, which is just stuff that I've decided to abandon. So I got this one here for recording a blog post, which is what I'm doing right now. So usually the first thing I do is I just drag something over to doing. It automatically assigns it to myself. I'm the only person who sees this board anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And I've actually started to be a little bit pedantic and actually even go through the whole feature request workflow. So you can see in Clubhouse here, when you open up a ticket, there's this Git helpers thing. I have my Clubhouse app hooked up to my Git repo for the website. So I can go in here, click this little button that copies the command to create a new branch for this thing. So if I switch over to VS Code here in my terminal, I got my checked out copy of the repo, and then I just paste that command, and I'm on my feature branch. So let's start a post. So open up a new buffer here, make sure it's marked down, and I have a few little snippets set up for just getting started. The one I use the most is this blog post start, which just adds basic sort of Pelican template data to the start of the post here. You'll notice that it automatically filled in the date and the modified date with the current date and time. Today is May 5th as I record this. And then there's sort of placeholder text that I can replace for the actual content that I'm writing. So in this case, so what was this? This was, what's the title of my post going to be here? How about recording? It's weird to type and talk at the same time. This is new for me. Share. And tags are just the categories of things I have in my blog. And this is a bit clunky. Currently, the way I decide on my tags, I literally go to my page and look at my list of tags and kind of see if anything jumps out at me. I'm not really sure what's jumping out at me here, so let's just go with, I don't know, blogging. Nice and generic. Cover image is what gets displayed when you go to, I think I still have it open actually. You can see on my Twitter feed here, these images, that's what the cover tag is. So that image there of the computer text is actually this default page image v2 image. Summary is just what gets displayed on that tweet, like in the little summary blurb there. So my process. Right, I cannot type today. And then the status is just a Pelican thing. Usually what I do is I just add a couple blank lines, sort of leave that line in there. It'll actually show up in the blog post itself but I change that line before I publish it. I just like to have that there just in case I accidentally commit this and push it up and it's not quite ready, then it won't actually show on the live feed. So let's get started. So I'm going to save this. Pelican experiment. So all my content is in this content directory. File name doesn't really matter, but anyway, so that's saved. So usually what I do at this point is I actually have a shortcut key set up to actually run the dev server. So you can see the output there. So now if I go to a browser and I go to localhost 8000, you can see there's my post. And I do this because then I can, as I write, I can just refresh this window and see my changes and see the post come together. Originally, I used to use the Zen mode in VS Code and then do a preview, which kind of works, but it's definitely not as nice as actually just seeing the site as it will appear once it's actually published. So I don't really do this anymore. So I'm just gonna close that preview. I do still often write in Zen mode, though. I find the view here to be quite nice. It's just nice and constrained, and there's not a lot of distractions, and allows me to sort of focus on what I'm writing. So what are we going to write here? Maybe what I should have done for this is actually just had some pre-written content that I could have just copy-pasted in here, but oh well, hindsight. So this might not be the most interesting part of the video. So a lot of times I'll do this when I have a link for something that doesn't exist yet. I'll put in a fix me, link to video once it's posted. And what I'll do is after I record this, I'm actually going to put it up on YouTube, and then I'll put a link to it in the post here. Yay. So not the most interesting post, but like I said, I thought it'd be kind of neat just to sort of show off how my workflow and how I go through this whole process of writing content, publishing it, getting it live and up, and the revision process, and all the tools I use along the way. So the post itself probably isn't going to be very interesting, but hopefully the video will be. So I think I'm just going to leave the content at that. So I'm going to get out of Zen mode here. And let's see what it looks like. So if I refresh the page, there's the page. Cool. So I have that fix me that I'll have to replace later after I actually publish the video. So maybe this will end up being a two-part recording. Not quite sure how I'm going to manage that, because once I publish it, that thing is going to be visible. Maybe what I will do, just to sort of simulate things, I will leave status draft. So this post won't actually appear in the live feed on my site, but I can still go through the whole process of how I publish content and how I use Clubhouse for managing the task and do the whole GitHub pull request flow thing. Okay, so save it again, refresh it. Cool, it's there. Just a sanity check. You'll notice that when I go to the home page that it no longer shows up in the feed because it's still a status of draft. So that's cool. It's safe to put up publicly because nobody's going to see it until it's completely done. Alrighty then. So at this point, I've written my content. I've looked at what it looks like in Chrome, and I'm happy with it. Okay, cool. What's the next step? Well, my next step is to actually commit the changes. So if I go back to my terminal window here, do a git status. So one of the neat things about Clubhouse is just like Jira, and I believe you can actually do this with GitHub as well if you use GitHub issues, is you can actually put in a little annotation that links a commit to a particular issue. And that's this CH147. You'll notice that's also in the branch name here that Clubhouse created for me. So now when I commit this, if I actually commit this, what did I do wrong there? Add the file then. So committed the message there, and if I do a git push origin the branch, push it up to GitHub, and if I flick back to Clubhouse really quick and I look at my ticket, you'll notice the branch actually shows up on the ticket here, which is kind of cool. I can even also click the button here to open a pull request. I actually don't use that. What I actually use is this thing. So I have a little git hook that creates this link automatically whenever I do a push to GitHub. And if I click that, it takes me to the screen where I open a pull request. Now this seems kind of like overkill given the only person who works on my blog is me, but I actually am finding this to be really valuable, this whole process of opening a pull request for every time I do a post. And the reason is because I have this template here that forces me to review the guidelines for contributing. So, I mean, the first two really aren't super relevant for me, because I always cut stuff off of master, and I I haven't forked my repo to open a pull request against my own repo. That wouldn't make sense. But it reminds me to do the code lint check. So let's do that. So I have a target set up in my make file that runs all my scripts and files in the repo through various linters, like there's a markdown lint, there's pylint, etc., etc. And because it completed without error, that means it passed the linter check. So it's good to go. So I can tick off that box. It's worth noting that my deployment process will actually run the same command, so it actually will not deploy changes to S3 if the lint checks fail. Which is kind of cool. I actually find that quite useful. There's definitely been times where I've forgotten to check that the content passes the linter, and then that has stopped me from actually preventing something dumb to my public, the actual production environment for my blog. So what description do I want to give this? Demonstrating. I also find that this whole process of creating the pull request is kind of neat. It gives me a bit of a history of things I've worked on, and I can go back to them at any time. So at this point, sometimes I'm good, and I'll actually go to the Files Change tab here and actually sanity check what I see in there that, like, oh, yep, that is what I expect. There definitely have been times where I've forgotten to do that and just gone willy-nilly merge, and then, you know, things get deployed and I realize later after the fact that, oh, I forgot to add that file to the commit, or, you know, whatever, and then I have to do a subsequent pull request. If you look at the history of pull requests in this repo, you'll see examples of that. But anyways, so in this case, you know, I looked at the commit, it looks good, I think it's fine, so I'll merge it, and then I'll delete the source branch. And one of the things that's I think it's kind of neat is, so the first thing I'll do is I'll switch over to master. So all my deployments come from the master branch. And I do a pull to get those changes that were just merged. And there they are, coolio. So now I can actually do the whole deployment. So one of the things that's neat is my tooling will actually check to make sure that the current directory is, A, you're on the master branch, and B, that there is no uncommitted changes. And the reason for that is because there's been times in the past where I've done a deployment without having committed everything that was intended to be a part of that publish process, and things have gotten lost. So it's a bit restrictive, but it's served me well. So just to demonstrate that, I'm going to create a bogus file here. So you'll see now that my directory's dirty. There is uncommitted changes in the current directory. So now when I do my deployment, so the way my deployment works is I actually run it from VS Code. It's just a target in my makefile that does the whole run the lints, sanity check that the directory is clean, then actually does the whole process of uploading the content to S3. I can actually, like, if you look at the makefile, you can see the actual task that goes through. So if I run this, deploy S3, it starts the process. I could have this all set up in like a CI pipeline, like use Travis or Jenkins or something like that to do all this for me. But given I'm the only person who works on this, this is sort of served me well enough for now. I may actually change that in the future and actually use something like Travis or Jenkins or Bamboo or whatever CI server of choice I feel like. But for now, this is good enough. And there we go. You can see, because there's uncommitted changes, it spits out saying, no, you have to have a clean working directory. Well, maybe not that well, but I know what the error message means. So I'm just going to remove that file. So my working tree is clean, and let's do the same process again. Whoops. So it goes through the whole process of building the container that the content's in, runs the linters over that content. Everything's good, cleans up my branches, and then it does the whole sync to S3, and that's what's happening right there. And then at the very end, it tags the release, pushes that tag to GitHub, and then it also spits a message into Slack. That's something else I can demonstrate. So I have a Slack room set up here, or my own. This is my own personal Slack team. In there, I have a channel called Code Event Coder, And I also have the GitHub integration set up. And you can see that like as I created the pull request, as commits were pushed, alert notifications about that fall into here. Again, this seems kind of silly given that the only person who looks at this stuff is me. But it's been kind of fun to just set all that up. And I could see this being very useful if you had collaborators working on a project together. But anyways, in terms of what goes into the channel here, I get a notification whenever there's a deployment, and it not only says that there was a deployment, but it also says like the username of the person who did the deployment. So that's just my username on this machine, the machine I'm on, and then the git SHA that was actually deployed. Other stuff that shows up in here is whenever you do stuff in Clubhouse, like you add comments on tickets, things like that, shows up in here. I'm not a huge fan of that. I actually sent a request to their support to see if there's a way you can configure that, because it seems very spammy. I might actually turn that off in the future, but we'll see. For now, it's kind of cool. Other things that show up is I have an if this then that integration that every time a new post shows up in my RSS feed, it puts a little notification in here. And yeah, so that's the Slack stuff. So now, usually what I do is at this point I'll close this window, go back to the Clubhouse ticket. If I refresh this, you'll notice the pull request is recorded on the ticket, which I find that quite useful, because for a given task, I can actually go back and like just click the link to see the actual pull request where that thing was changed, which is pretty useful. So I'm going to simulate what happens when I'm done. I'm not actually done with this because I still have to actually, post-process this video and put it up on YouTube and fix that link and publish the post. But you could imagine that at this point, if I were done with my post, what I would do then is I would move it from doing to done. So that's what I would do, and then I would kind of be done with this issue and move on with my life. Actually, one thing I usually do before I even do that is just as a sanity check. And this is going to be tricky because I can't actually see the post. So I'll go to my homepage. Sometimes the post doesn't show up right away because of caching issues. The way Cloudfront is, if I want posts I just published to show up immediately on the homepage, I have to issue a Cloudfront invalidation. I have a post in here somewhere that just talks about how you do that. Alternatively, you can just go to the actual URL, which will be the same as the what did I call it? Yeah, that one. So this is my dev server. I just want to get the link, because the link will be the same on the dev server as it will be on the public server once the content is for real. I don't know if drafts you can actually navigate directly to. Can you? No, you can't. So I can't actually do what I was about to do with the real post because it's not public yet. So I'll use this post as an example. This is one I just recently posted. And I'll take the link. I go to Pingdom. It has this nice website checker, and I'll just fire the link through their checker just to check that I haven't, are there things I need to set up? Have I missed anything? Is there anything glaring about the page that's broken? Wow, that's really slow. Because I picked Australia. And it probably wasn't cached. I'm sure if I do it again, it will be quite a bit less. Let's actually do that again. You're going to see this load time drop. Yeah. So that's Cloudfront at work, actually, which is kind of cool to see. But anyways, performance grade's pretty good, 96%. You can see a preview of the page, and it looks pretty good. And then you get these sort of summary things you can do to improve the performance. Leverage browser caching, minimize DNS lookups. In my case, most of these things are things that are sort of outside of my control. So I have this little integration here for add this, so you can share any of the posts I do. And funny enough, apparently add this isn't very good at setting these properties on these resources. So you'll notice the domain on these is add this and Google APIs. So these aren't files that I currently host myself. I just link to them. I could host them myself, and I might do that in the future, but then the risk is then I have to maintain those files, right? So, but anyways, yeah. So it sort of shows the ways in which I can improve the performance of my page. In this case, all these things it's suggesting are resources I don't really control. So I think it's pretty good. So, and I usually do that as just a sanity check. The one that tends to come up for me is if there are images in a page, I have to actually set the cache control header on those images. Otherwise, they'll show up in this list here on the leverage browser caching. There's been a few times where a few other things have shown up. It's just a good sanity check. So, okay, at this point, content is pushed, it's deployed. I've done the sanity check to make sure Pingdom says everything's cool. And then this is the point where I probably pull the thing over from doing to done. One of the things that's kind of neat about my workflow, or I think is kind of neat, you'll notice that, so I used to have that feature branch that I did the work on, this codependent coder CH147 record a blog post branch. That's where I did my work, and I pushed that up to GitHub. And when I deleted the branch from GitHub, that still left a local copy of the branch here on my repo. So the question is well, where, oh, actually, I'm just noticing that I have dirty changes, so let me get rid of that. What? Anyway, discard those changes. So the question is, what happened to that branch? Because you saw when I did the git b, that branch is now gone. And I actually have, as part of my make file here, when it does the upload to S3, one of the things it does beforehand is this clean branches target. And what that clean branches target does, somewhere, oh, there it is it first fetches all the different branches from my remote. And then for any branch that is merged, has been merged into the current branch, and that is not named master or dev, delete that branch. So when I hit delete branch on the pull request and then do a push to S3, it automatically cleans that merged feature branch from my local copy, which is handy because then I don't have to actually, otherwise over time you end up with a whole bunch of extra feature branches that have been accumulated over time. This everything in Docker branch is an experimental branch I had from a little while ago where I was trying to get everything, my entire development environment running inside a Docker container. For the moment, I've kind of abandoned that. That's actually one of those tickets that's in the will not do column in Clubhouse. Entire dev and oh, that's interesting. I guess it's not linked to the ticket because I actually did that work before I migrated to Clubhouse. But anyways, so that's why that branch is still lingering around. Is I haven't decided if I want to completely turf that work. So I just leave that branch floating around. I think more than anything, it's just I'm not willing to let go of it yet. I probably should because it's pretty stale at this point. But yeah, that's pretty much my process. And like one of the things I'm quite happy with is all the little automatic stuff that happens along the way. So aside from the if this then that thing, one of the things that happens automatically, and you can't see this in this video because I didn't actually, again, the post I did was status of draft, but you'll notice when I go to my Twitter feed, sorry, there it is, that these tweets for posts show up. And I don't do those manually. That's actually done automatically by a process called Deliver It. Am I logged in? I'm not logged in. Uno momento. Sorry, I just had to get my password from my password manager. No, I don't want you to remember the password. So Deliver It is actually a really sweet product, and this is completely free for me. What it does is I've hooked it up to my RSS feed for my blog, and it just automatically, every time there's a new post and that RSS feed gets updated, it automatically tweets out to my codependent coder Twitter feed that blog post. And then, the fact that these tweets actually look kind of nice, that's all done through meta tags. They're added automatically as part of my Pelican theme. I don't do those on each post. The only thing that does change per post, like per entry here, is this image, which I can specify as part of that cover tag in the blog post, and the summary text, which is pretty much part of just writing the article in the first place. So I'm quite pleased with how automatic that process is. I think Deliver It looks at the feed like once a day or something like that. It's not super frequent. I think if you pay start paying them money, then you can actually make it monitor quicker. Well, maybe it is more often because it says it checked 24 seconds ago. Yeah, post more than 10. Oh, that's what it is. It's depending on how many posts you do per day. And I don't post all that much stuff. But yeah, so that's pretty much my flow. That's the process. Hopefully some of this was interesting or useful. Anyways, cheers.